Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Happy Thorsday to all who celebrate. Thor Nystrom from Matthew Berry's FantasyLife.com. What's going on, Thor?
Not a lot, boys. Very excited to talk to you on another Thursday. The Vikings keep winning. The Vikings are now tied for first place. The Vikings now control their own destiny. It's a good day to be alive.
It's a good day to control your own destiny.
Sure is.
Thursdays are great. Thursdays are fantastic.
Judd, nothing pairs better with a Thorsday than a Padres, right? They're just kind of a match made in heaven.
Absolutely, so true. Such a great point. And guess what? Tonight, I think for Sport Day, it's going to be all about sipping on a few Padres because their beer is delicious. Why? Because all they do is beer. They don't do a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different drinks. They focus on their beer. I've been talking about their red beer for a long time, but there are a bunch of their beers that are absolutely fantastic. And you would love them if you're a beer connoisseur. And right now you're saying, well, that sounds great. How do I get my hands on them? And I'm going to tell you right now that they have a new distributorship. They are going to be available in more liquor stores and bars throughout the metro into the entire state. And all you have to do is ask at your liquor store or your bar, hey, do you have Padres? If not, can you get it? And the answer will be yes. So try it out. Padres, absolutely a delicious beer and a great beer for sipping on.
Yes. Also, a reminder. So today is the last day of the Score North annual holiday auction. ScoreNorth.com, keyword auction, to view the various items that are up for bid. All sorts of awesome things. You can see them on the YouTube channel here. But these could be great last-minute holiday deals. And there's big stuff like a 2024 quad hauler from Pleasureland RV. There's the ultimate golf package at Deer Run Golf Course. And then there's also smaller items as well, like one-night stays at Intercontinental Hotel, MSP Airport. So check it all out. This is your 8 o'clock tonight, I believe, is the ending time here, 8 o'clock Central Time. So ScoreNorth.com, keyword auction. So I want to throw something at the group here and get your guys' thoughts. We sort of touched on this on a previous episode this week. But with Kirk Cousins getting benched, and we'll do the full Kirk discussion with Thor as well, who was, I'm sure, shirtless and running around his neighborhood, pouring Padres all over his body. But Kwesi has been, we talk about his drafting is kind of suspect. He's been awesome at one of the hardest things it is to do as a general manager, which is identifying the players that are right up against the age cliff and or the players that if you pay them another contract, it's going to cripple your cap situation. And he has done an awesome job saying goodbye to those players at the right time, almost every single one. Cousins is the latest one. Dalvin Cook, Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen can still play a little bit, but in terms of the price it would have cost to keep him around, Patrick Peterson people wanted to keep around. And you'd rather be a year early, they were probably a year early on Danielle Hunter, but in terms of the cap sheet, you'd rather have Grenard and Van Ginkel for the same or less than the Texans are paying Danielle Hunter. So I think that's hard to do as a GM because there's also a sentimental attachment to certain players, and we feel that with fans. But Kwesi is kind of awesome at doing this as a GM.
And this is what's kind of awesome about having a GM that worked in Wall Street. Do you think he had any compunction or any feelings about the stocks he was trading and them buying? It's just data. It's analytics is informing what his decisions are. And he's not completely cold-blooded. Of course, he's far warmer with the people inside the building than our last general manager. But that being said, his decision-making paradigm is not being affected whatsoever by feelings of loyalty to employees that could no longer maybe help the company.
And this is also where the good cop, bad cop routine is absolutely imperative because O'Connell is the good cop. O'Connell loves everybody. He loves his players, right? And it's important that he convinces them that is the truth, which he's done. But then the big bad guy from upstairs can come down and say, well, I'm sorry, Kirk Cousins can't stay. And because if you guys recall, on locker cleanout day of the 2023 season, we have multiple quotes, if you go back, saying Cousins is our quarterback. We want him back badly. He's our leader. We love Kirk. Now, that might have been true. It might not be, but that's what the players talked about, right? And then Kwesi can come downstairs and say, well, we tried, but sorry, price tag too high. This is where that structure to me is so vital. Because when you have that separation of church and state, you can play the good cop, bad cop, coach GM role perfectly. And the Vikings are doing that in spades right now. Because I do think that everyone in that room, and O'Connell says this constantly, I love you guys. Well, you can't say that and then be the guy to be like, I loved you, but now you're gone. So I think the Vikings have reached a really, really nice place of the separation between those two to allow what Phil just talked about, which is difficult decisions to be made based solely on contracts and age.
Yeah, they sure have. And the dichotomy that you talked about, I'm sure that's very helpful in the building. But Kwesi and KOC always being on the same page, and with Brian Flores and the other parts of the coaching staff, it's like a living organism where everything is connected now. Whereas the Rick Spielman Vikings, it was like the brain that's inside of the container, that's like talking on the cartoon. It's like he does all the decisions himself. It's an isolated thing.
Yeah.
Is it Crane from
Crane, maybe, yeah.
Super Ninja Turtles?
But
yeah.
But guys, this is where this and so we are hitting on the very, very important discussion. This is the Sam Darnold discussion that's going to take place. Like, you can't let him go now. He's played too well. What happens if?
Yeah.
I maintain there's a plan here. And it doesn't mean it can't change. And, if Sam's like, you know what, I will take a 1-year contract. I don't need that much. Then certainly things could change. But we are hitting on the very nerve center of that quarterback decision. Because if Darnold comes in and says, I need 3 years at X amount, guaranteed. And fans are like, well, you got to pay him. Look at how he paid. That's not how they think.
Yeah, and to add to that, yes, like quarterback is the most important, influential position for winning in the NFL. But I feel like we, meaning observers of the sport, and even front offices, the Vikings did this. They made this mistake. The Cowboys are making this mistake. We put too much importance on, well, okay, we have a guy that's good at the position. Maybe he's not Mahomes, or maybe he's not Josh Allen, but we know it's a known commodity. Therefore, we have to pay him ridiculous amounts of money and then figure out the rest. Like, no. This is you might take a step back in quarterback play, but if it frees you up to build a better roster, it's a team sport. And that's the funny thing is, like, the argument for Kirk Cousins all those years where it's not Kirk's fault. Football's a team sport. Right. If football is a team sport, then why the hell are you paying one guy who isn't able to lift a team up to a certain point that much money? So with Sam, Sam is benefiting from some amazing infrastructure. Daniel Jones was benefiting from some decent infrastructure a couple years ago. It's when teams have to make that decision now, oh man, like we kind of like the way things are going here now. But $10 million for Sam Darnold on a 1-year deal is very much different than $40 million and resources taken away from the infrastructure that he built his value on to begin with, right? That's the story of Kirk Cousins' career, by the way.
That's right. If you give him that salary, he will be playing with worse rosters going forward. Who is it? Dan Orlovsky put some out on Twitter a day or two ago about which quarterback would you prefer for next year? Brock Purdy at $52+ million, Sam Darnold at $52+ million, Kirk Cousins at 25 or whatever he said. And I replied and said option 4, which is J.J. McCarthy at $4.9 million. People out there forget that the salary cap exists. Sam Darnold, let's say it is $52 million on the open market, something like that. With the difference between him and McCarthy next year, $47 million to the cap just next year. That is without even going into the future years. Do you know how much you can buy on the open market with $47 million when you are not purchasing a quarterback? It's absolutely ludicrous. You look through the Vikings, right? Byron Murphy, who's a free agent, his cap hit this year was 10.9. Jonathan Grenard, 5.7. Was Shaq Griffin was 4.4. Do you know Blake Castro was 3.1? Do you know how much you can buy with $47 million on the open market? Like, this was the same argument that, and this is the part in the argument where I'd start bashing my head against the table, talking to all those, and bless your souls wherever you are in the universe, Kirk Crusaders. The asteroid came to Earth and wiped all those people out. I miss you guys. But this was the annoying thing about that conversation when they would try to turn everything into, oh, you think Cousins stinks. And it's like, no, you don't understand the salary cap. This is what a player like that should be worth. And that's even a discussion of whether you should pay it, et cetera, et cetera. You can find someone analogous for way less money. And that is what ended up happening. Well, what does that mean? It means the rest of your roster is way friggin' better. And for people out there that aren't able to disassociate themselves from the names, you have too much of a pull. Unlike Kwesi, right? Like Kirk Cousins, you love Kirk, you love Sam Darnold. Let's toss the names out for a second. Just think back the last 10 years, the last decade of Vikings football, and think about this as a numbers game. Those 10 years, the years where they were giving the higher portion of their salary cap to the quarterback position, what was their record and how many playoff games did they win? I can answer the second question for you. It was 1. When they weren't giving the money to the quarterback position and the rest of the roster was what it was, what was their record and how many games did they win? They won more the Keenum season than Cousins won in his entire tenure. Does that mean that Keenum is a better quarterback than Cousins? No, it means you can make the roster way friggin' better by paying him his number as opposed to Cousins.
Correct.
And where the Vikings now have a distinct advantage, and we're probably not talking about this enough in the context that I'm about to broach, but where the Vikings have an advantage is the one place where there's not a salary cap is on coaching staffs.
Yeah.
And if you think that Kevin O'Connell is in his office, curled up in the fetal position right now, saying, well, if Darnold leaves, what am I going to do? McCarthy might not be ready. Kevin O'Connell, I guarantee you, I mean, and he's a nice guy, and he comes off as a nice guy. 1, he's a huge competitor. 2, he is very confident in the abilities, and he should be, of Kevin O'Connell. So if you're thinking, well, McCarthy's arm is not Darnold's arm, so how are they going to do this and that? Kevin O'Connell can adjust. He will adjust. Kevin O'Connell, Kirk Cousins, up until now, had always been a statistically successful QB. But his best quarterback play, we could say beyond a shadow of a doubt, came with Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah.
And now, Sam Darnold. His best quarterback play, it's not a coincidence, is coming with O'Connell, who, by the way, is utilizing a different skill set that Darnold has than Cousins had. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we all believe that Kevin O'Connell likes J.J. McCarthy of all 3 of those guys the most because he thinks he's going to turn him into Darnold. Absolutely not. So they can pay O'Connell now, and he's going to get paid huge. They can pay O'Connell as much as they want without salary cap restrictions, allowing themselves to still build their roster. Like, this is where the Vikings missed the boat for a long time. And to go back to 17, you know what never gets talked about? What we just ignore completely is in 2017, Mike Zimmer had easily, as far as a working relationship, I think, and as far as success, the best OC that he had in his entire tenure here. Pat Shurmur had a phenomenal play calling season. I would argue it's the best play calling season I've seen from a Vikings OC, not coach, but OC. And Case Keenum thrived. It's no coincidence. So like this is where you make up the difference. It's the coaching. If you have the right people, the Vikings have them. So like this whole, Kevin O'Connell, I saw him crying on the street corner. He doesn't know what he's going to do. That notion is ridiculous. It's not happening. He'll be fine. He's very confident, and I think that he will get the most from McCarthy, just like he did from Kirk, just like he did from Sam Darnold.
You know, real quick. You go first, Thor. You go first.
I was just going to say amen to all that, and also you have to pay Mr. Brian Flores. We have to lock down the border and make sure that Brian Flores doesn't leave. And in addition to that, the other thing that doesn't have a salary cap, it's your front office. It is your scouting department.
Yep.
It's your analytics department. So I hope going forward the Wilfs, and I believe that they will, are going to invest heavily in that. That's a way you can get a competitive advantage off the field as well.
You know, there's the phrase opportunity cost comes to mind. Like if you go back to the Cousins era and now into the Sam Darnold era, we get so caught up in like the known commodity and the risk of letting go of a known commodity. because we know what it is. Like, we can quantify it. It's certainly not a train wreck, and there's hope that you could maybe make a run. But the opportunity cost by sticking with the known commodity is the what if, what else is possible out there, right? And the Vikings finally said, you know what? Maybe it is a risk. But if you go back and play the last 9 months out, for everyone saying how risky it is to move on from this known commodity, now that these months have played out, the risk would have been not doing it. Because now you'd be sitting here, maybe he agrees to like a 2 or 3 year deal with a couple years guaranteed. And I would apply that same logic to right now anyways. And if circumstances continue to evolve and change, we can have a different discussion in a month. It's the risk isn't, oh, you better be careful getting rid of Sam Darnold. The risk is not going all into a quarterback that you believed in who makes $4.9 million and will be very cap friendly for the next 3 or 4 years and building off of that moving into 2025. Like, that is the risk. Not doing that would be the risk.
That's right. It is essentially locking, if you do the long-term quarterback contract here, whether it is with Kirk or whether it is with Sam Darnold going forward, you are locking yourself in a cell with them and throwing the key out where you no longer have the flexibility to explore the space. Hey, you like it when Kwesi has even a modicum, even a dollop of cap flexibility? You see what he did this offseason? When they had all these financial restraints, he had a little bit of cap space, but not a ton. And what he was able to do in free agency with that, why would you want to siphon that guy off for years and years and years? In deference to what? The one-year wonder guy that Kevin O'Connell brought up the same time that the guy that started the last 6-7 years, every year we knew what his stat production was going to be, and he has fallen off a cliff. Case Keenum played his best ball with O'Connell. You were mentioning it. You go back, all these different guys have played way better with O'Connell than before. You want to block his handpicked top 10 overall quarterback selection who has 4 years left on his rookie deal and throw out the plan that you have already made, the path that you are walking down. No, the move here, and I think that this is what they are going to do. So we talked about last week. Darnold, bless him. Keep playing your ass off, man. And if he goes and he makes the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game or the the longer it goes and the better he plays, the more he's going to get on the open market. $52 million, and now it gets to Brock Purdy. People do the thought experiment of, well, hey, Thor, I know, but what if they win the Super Bowl? And what if Sam is top 3 in the MVP voting? Well, now he's made himself especially cost prohibitive to you. Now you especially can't do it. If he wins the Super Bowl and he's top 3 in MVP, that is the most scenario where you can't sign him. What, now we're going to junk the entire plan? All the cap space now goes to him? So now we have 2 quarterbacks that we like in the other positions. Who cares about right guard? Who cares about getting a center upgrade? You know what? Who cares about the defensive line? And who cares about that aging cornerback room? Brian Flores figured it out this year. He'll figure it out next year too. That's not how a Wall Street guy runs things, and it's not how a winner sees decisions like this. The move here is Darnold is going to create whatever market he is going to on the free agent market. You tag him with a pre-worked out trade done, whether it's with the Rams, whether it was with the Titans who just benched Will Levis, whatever it is. And if you can even get what the Panthers got, what was it, 6, 7, 8 months ago for Brian Burns?
Yeah.
When he was franchise tagged, there was a funny thing where I think it was in Mobile, where Dan Morgan was standing next to Joe Shane or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, you have any interest in trading your first round pick for Brian Burns? And then they kind of laughed. And then Shane's like, well, what would it really be? And they started the negotiation on that. It ended up being a second that year and a 5th the year after. Let's just say that you can get that package, but same year, you get the 2nd, the 5th. Now, all of a sudden, the Vikings, a team that are pick poor right this moment, you would go from that to now all of a sudden you would have the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, 3 5ths if you made a trade that was equal to the Brian Burns trade.
That would be, can you imagine turning 1 year, $10 million of Sam Darnold coming in as a bridge/backup? And if you could do the Brian Burns thing or what the Patriots did with Matt Castle back 15 years ago, you tag him with a trade already in the works, and you get a 2nd-round pick and some change. Like, to turn that into a 2nd-round pick would be wild. I almost wish, like, side note, that one of us vehemently disagreed with this, because we're just like an echo chamber of love you, Sam, but thanks for the season. But I don't know. We all seem to just sort of agree on this topic, I guess.
And Phil, I think we have a better understanding now of the decision makers that are in charge of these decisions. And I think we had a feeling about that. That's why we were more bullish that they were going to allow Cousins to leave, because of what we thought about the way that those guys saw the organization. That ended up being true. And I think that's what it is. I think the people that are arguing for some of these other things, I don't think they have a great understanding of the people that are making the decisions and the path that we're already on.
Well, and I think too that if you're a longtime Vikings fan, right, you're scared of this because you don't trust it yet. You should trust it. You should trust O'Connell especially. But
trust the process.
Trust the process, which is a complete cliche, but in this case is exactly right. But, if you are a longtime fan here, I mean, you just had Rick Spielman, for all his good and bad, was almost incapable, unless you think Teddy was going to be really good, incapable of identifying a quarterback. To the point of where he, in 2018, threw in the towel, signed Kirk, and literally destroyed his relationship with his hand-picked head coach. Because I think it's very important for Zim and Spielman. There is the BK before Kirk and the AK after Kirk. And the before Kirk, actually, quarterback-wise, was frustrating at times, but it was pretty damn good. Like, you went to an NFC title game based on what? Salary cap room that allowed you to build a defense and keep a defense that was among, if not the best in the entire league.
Pay a running back. I mean, early in there, Peterson was still really good for a couple of years.
We tend to now just hold on to 2018 to 21. But the reality is now you've got a team with a plan and a coach with a plan and a GM. Now the only thing with the GM thing that I will say is this. To what Phil is saying, that gets tougher as more of the players become your players. Like I'll be very curious to see in a few years when a few guys start to age out who are their handpicked guys. Because like Spielman was great at first. He was cutting guys left and right. It's like, yes, this is how it works. But then you get guys where perfect example, Eric Kendricks, right? You become, you drafted Eric Kendricks. He's a great story. We can't give up.
Guy.
Exactly right. So that's where it's sort of, I think the page gets turned a bit to, okay, are you now able to look in the eye and cut guys that you considered that were kids when you drafted them? That's the next step.
I got a couple names for you that might give us a good indication of where we're headed with that. Louis Sean, Andrew Booth, Caleb Evans, Asezi Atomwo. Do we have any others?
He did bail on all those guys.
He did, but they were quick. I'm saying guys that established themselves, the Thielens, the Kendricks, the guys that established themselves as your core players. But if you're smart at football, you do cut them.
I'm going to turn this on Thor because what's going to be epic is in 4 years when J.J. McCarthy is a pretty good quarterback, but he's like the 9th or 12th best quarterback in the league.
Will he be coming off his second Super Bowl win or third at that time?
Now a Super Bowl
win. Well, he's too much. Now he costs too much.
Oh, I thought Sam Darnold were going to get rid of him either way. And we're going to watch Thor's ass squirm in that chair having this discussion.
We'll have to see what the circumstance is. We'll have to see how the rest of the roster looks. I would have a hard time saying goodbye to my son.
You'll have a new QB by then. You love the college game. You'll find a new love. They'll draft him. You'll push for him. McCarthy will be yesterday's news.
I'll never quit you, JJ.
Real quick before we get to some other topics and a mock here, the Falcons on the flip side have basically said, all right, well, we need to win 3 games down the stretch here. The highest pressure possible forget about like starting week 1. Hey, Michael Penix, save our season in the last 3 weeks here. What do you make of the Falcons side of this whole ordeal from March all the way through this week's press release?
Yeah, it's run like you'd want an organization run, like all those smart guys there, and the plan all came together. They're a bunch of morons. We were talking about this in April.
You called this back in yeah.
Yeah, what did I say after day one of that draft? That Terry Fontenot should have been escorted out with his boxes by Falcon security that day. That guy is horrible at his job. He is the people will do like the appealed authority. They'll be like, oh, Kwesi, you have to trust that, or this and that. Terry Fontenot being the exception to this. Again, you have idiots every year, every cycle in every single professional sport that reach that pinnacle of getting to make decisions for their franchises. The thing that they did in April, after the Cousins thing either made no sense or the Penix thing made no sense. Either way, but in conjunction, they really made no sense with each other. And that's what the Falcons decided to do. It's a poorly run organization. We knew that this thing was going to end in disaster. Disaster one is Cousins plays like he's going down the hill a little bit, but it's more or less passable, and you can get through the 2 or 3 years where you funnel all the money to him. Well, taking away the cheat code of the rookie contract that you just selected, so you're giving that away. That's disaster one. Disaster two is that Kirk Cousins is so terrible in his first 11, 12 games for your franchise that you have to bench him, despite the fact that he has a $65 million dead cap hit next year.
Yeah.
What to release him, you have to essentially destroy the team for 1 year. You want to talk about an all-time albatross.
So what they'll do, or like diminish it for 2 years, because what they'll probably do is post June 1st designation and spread that penalty over 2 years.
Yeah.
But now you're eating it over 2 years, and it reduces the amount of players you can bring in 100%.
Correct. Yeah. Now you have to have the rookie contract because their books are ruined the next couple of years. Again, terrible Terry Fontenot. The entertainment value out of that guy, it just keeps giving. When the Falcons fire that guy, they can maybe start to entertain thoughts of winning again. But yeah, disastrous decision. And it's a great dichotomy to look at that, and cool that Kirk Cousins went there to make this a stronger through line. The dichotomy between a front office and a coaching staff that like the Vikings have, and one like the Falcons, where it is utterly rudderless and directionless, and you see things like this manifest out of that.
The soap opera now though is going to be the best. Because Kirk gets up to the podium. I wasn't playing well enough, blah, blah, blah. Behind the scenes, this is going to be a battle royale of financial. Yeah. And I saw immediate things. Well, the Falcons will just trade him. He has a complete no trade clause. Do you really think he's going to force them to cut him?
Sure will.
And the offset language means he's going to sign for like $1.50 with his new team, and the Falcons are going to have to pay every last bit of that $100 million guaranteed. And you know what? Again, I will say it. You guys bash Kirk all you want. The man is going to ascend straight into Canton, Ohio, with his agent as the greatest negotiator of all time. And don't sell Kirk short here. I feel like we're like, well, Mike McCartney is the guy that did this. Kirk Cousins, we saw it going back to that mini documentary that they did when he signed here, and he basically jacked the Jets up to more than the Vikings. But then the Vikings are like, okay, we'll get closer. And Kirk said, okay, now we got him. This is the greatest negotiator of all time, and if you think he's going to go quietly into the night after moving to his wife's home state to be home and just say, okay, that's cool, I'll go, just trade me to Team X. This is going to be awesome.
Dude, to your point, Judd, he people paint him as like this aw shucks, kind of brilliant. Dude, he is so much more ruthless in these situations than people give him credit for. But you said he's going to sign for $1.50 with his new team.
No, just stop it. Josh, you did this yesterday. I've seen tweets about this now. Would you just stop? He is not getting near my building.
Kirk. So JJ's the guy, and we need you to accept the second act of your career here. And help show him the ropes. That would be a disaster. I would not welcome that into my building either. But I would say it is a non-zero chance that happens. Well, I want to brace people.
If Danny Dimes is that guy, right? I mean, that's why they signed Danny. It doesn't have anything to do with this year. It's next year. You're going to be the QB2. You're going to be mentoring Mr. JJ McCarthy, and maybe if Daniel Jones got more in free agency somewhere else, I don't know. But if he did, maybe old Kirk goes out there. Look, anyone can come to the Kevin O'Connell rehabilitation school for quarterbacks who no longer throw good and don't read defenses good either.
Kirk might need a tune-up.
Caleb wants to
That's
come
what
here
I'm-
now. Caleb again on Monday night was looking at KO like, save me. It's like a horror film, and KO's like the good guy, the only good guy.
Yeah, he sure is. And Judd, to your previous point, you're totally right. Kirk, what this situation is, it's the Derek Carr thing with the Raiders, except Kirk is a lot more ruthless than Derek Carr. If you think he is going to waive his no trade clause, you are crazy. That guy, he will have fun saying no about that. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what the fans think about him. He cares about the dollar. And he wants to get away from that organization now. And he'll get to choose his next destination. And then after that, they can, if they have a decent 1 year, then or whatever, then they can go out and they can sign for more without that offset thing. But that's exactly what that dude is. He's it just goes. What do you call it? Mercenary?
Yes.
How about, there's been these flirtations very publicly in some cases for years and years with the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, who are entering a Brock Purdy discussion that gets uncomfortable for all the same reasons we've talked about, because Brock is a good quarterback, but he's going to be demanding $50-60 million a year. And I just wonder if the 49ers have had the stones to say goodbye to Jimmy Garoppolo, who helped them get to a Super Bowl, Trey Lance, who they traded a bunch of picks for. Like, the Niners are kind of ruthless in their evaluation of quarterbacks. I wonder if this is the opportunity. Do the Niners wind up like trading Brock Purdy or something, bringing Kirk in for a year, and then going back to the drawing board a little bit? There's so many possibilities that are going to unfold in the next 2.5 months. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, it's hilarious also because we have the designation of good quarterback and we have bad quarterback. We should almost make a third bucket of, depending on if they're playing for KOC or McVay or Shanahan or Mike McDaniels, or there's or LaFleur maybe. There's 8 of them or 7 of them. And if they're not playing for one of those guys, they stink. And if they are, you will think that they're very good and quasi MVP candidates. We need to have that 8-person bucket. Brock Purdy, he goes and signs with the friggin' Titans this offseason. It's going to be a disaster. He needs to be with one of the other teams that has one of those 8 coaches, right? Sam Darnold. If he signs with the Titans this offseason, guess what? He's going to stink there. What is the difference? What is the difference with all these situations? A guy named Kevin O'Connell, right? I mean, he is the one that's making this one thing into something else, and then when it leaves, it reverts back. He's the watchmaker. He's the guy who has the value. Pay Kevin O'Connell $30 million a year, $40 million a year. He's more valuable than all those guys.
So if the Niners move on from Purdy, does it make more sense to turn your attention to Cousins or Darnold, who was there?
Well, Darnold, but the cost is going to be
more.
I mean, because you can get Cousins for league minimum.
The Cousins one will be the Russell Wilson from this last year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just not the problem with Kirk is I'm just not convinced he's not done.
Yeah, that's
fair. See, you watch him play now, he is making the exact same decisions that he made here. Yeah. His arm strength is gone.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he's fully healthy yet, right? Right. It still seems like that lower half, you're not getting that really crisp push off to generate some of that velo. Yeah. And so it's he's it's like a windmill that doesn't have its base, sort of. It's hard to get to generate the power with that. And that's what we're seeing with it. But maybe next year, right now, you're the year plus off of your recovery timeline. I see no reason why that guy couldn't have a couple decent years as a bridge starter, however you want to call it. He can still. You mentioned it. When I watch him on TV, it looks more or less like the Cousins that we had. It's just he's not generating that same velo or that same zip. I think he's more or less making the decisions the same, but it's not as good of a playbook. You're not playing with as good of players, and then the velocity on these throws isn't there. And Cousins, he always existed on sort of the razor's edge. Mm-hmm. This is the reason why he fell to the 4th round in his draft class. He's not athletic. He doesn't have a big arm. He needs to beat you with his brain. And when the physical tools have depreciated even more, it's not like he's this supercomputer that before the play, he can make the decision then. So that's the issue that we've seen, and hopefully the next couple of years for him at least that he feels fully healthy then.
I'm going to give you just in terms of like the McVays, the Shanahans, the KOCs, and we all kind of assume that, it's the higher up the tree you go, like that's the straw that stirs the drink because Kevin O'Connell's underneath Sean McVay and underneath, right? Just for fun here, let's take the 2 Kevin O'Connell offensive coordinator years out of Sean McVay's resume here, boys. Let's see. Let's include playoffs. Divided by 103, carry the 4 there. So Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay has a .692 winning percentage when Kevin O'Connell is his offensive coordinator.
I like where this is going.
And he has a .520 winning percentage when Kevin O'Connell is not his offensive coordinator.
Yep.
Just saying. Who really stirs the drink around here in the NFL? Maybe it's KOC.
First off, Kwesi clinched Executive of the Year, in my opinion, when Cousins was benched. He probably had it before then. And to me, that thing's over. Kevin O'Connell, he already should have clinched Coach. I don't know what argument you're going to make for somebody else. The Vikings had a 6.5 win total. And maybe this is an off-season episode. We might have to have a really serious discussion going through the top 10 coaches in the NFL because Kevin O'Connell, you can't get very deep into that list before you're going to have to list them now. And it's not just as a head coach, right? You're with him. It appears that you have certainly one of the league's best head coaches just in a vacuum. But then on this other side, you also have one of the league's 1, 2, 3 best offensive play callers. And this guy who has this superpower with the quarterbacks, the value of that, it's not captured by the current market of NFL coaching salaries. Again, I absolutely believe that Kevin O'Connell is worth like $25 million.
Andy Reid is at 20. Andy Reid's the highest paid, I think 20.
He should be at where Reid is or maybe even a little bit above to try to incentivize him to stay at the age that he is at long term.
Is this the best coaching tree since the Bill Walsh one? Like when you look at it, and I guess it would be the Shanahan tree, but it's probably more Mike originally than Kyle. But is this the best? Like because you do look at that Walsh coaching tree is incredible. It was Mike Holmgren came from that.
Mariucci, right?
Reid was then the quarterback's coach. Mariucci was on that staff. A lot of that tree all went to the Packers, but then it started to disperse again. But I think this might be the best coaching tree, like just as far as just great offensive minds since that one.
Yeah, it's tremendous, and we'll see in the future Kevin O'Connell's because it seems like he got a pretty good coaching staff here as well. But yeah, right. that certainly flowered out a ton, and it's given the NFL a ton. And yeah, it's interesting how they, in one sense, they have very similar philosophies. Some of those different guys, but then on where they differ, areas where they differ, and it's kind of interesting because Kevin O'Connell, he's similar to Sean McVay for sure, but he's also not exactly the same.
All right, we're going to get to an interesting mock here in a moment. But, Dex, what's going on Underdog? This is a big, big football week and weekend, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, you can still do college football. You can get an NFL, NBA, NHL. Yeah, I'll be texting Thor on Friday night. What is the college football play of the day?
You should have texted me yesterday. I smoked the props yesterday. The James Madison Western Kentucky game was a cash bonanza over here. It was all from the sky.
See, just tweet at Thor when you need James Madison higher and lowers on Underdog. He's going to help you out.
I will.
Promo code SCORE for a 50% deposit match. Still gets those first-time users a little bit of a boost. And for those current users, keep making those pick'ems. Keep playing fantasy football and fantasy sports all year long at Underdog. Promo code SCORE. First-time users for a 50% deposit match.
Hey, Park Dental is the official dentist now of yours truly. Had a great first appointment there back in August, and it's almost time now for the old 6 month, I think in February, because it was like early August. So going to have to make sure that I schedule my next appointment here for early 2025. Park Dental, over 50 years caring for and cleaning teeth in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin. They treat patients of all ages, young whippersnappers like Declan and old codgers like Judd. They are a comprehensive family dentist. You can schedule your checkup at parkdental.com, Shunny.
All right, look, gum problems here. What's going on, guys? Just woke up from my nap.
Dental.com. Also, AG1 is powering this episode of Purple Daily as well, just like they're powering a lot of top athletes all over the world and top podcasters too, clearly. AG1 is a simple, comprehensive, foundational nutrition supplement for whole body health. Each scoop or travel pack of AG1 contains whole food sourced ingredients that support your gut health, your focus, your immune health, and more, ensuring you give your body the nutrients it needs to thrive. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 of these free travel packs right here with your first purchase. drinkag1.com/purpledaily. That's drinkag1.com/purpledaily.
What's that, Sonny? I missed all that. Can you repeat it, please?
There's some AG1 in my
AG1,
gums.
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling peppy.
Yes. Those newspapers, huh?
Hey, Chris.
Ain't you got those newspapers?
Let's mock, shall we?
I want to mock! I want to!
This one comes from last week. It's our guy Field Yates from ESPN.com.
Yep.
Field Yates, one of the
What's up,
great
Field?
names in football media. So he's got, let's see here, Shadur Sanders going number 1 to the Giants. He's got, I think he's got the right, this might be before last week's games, but yeah, Raiders, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter to the Patriots, Heisman winner. So kind of chalky there. Let's just get right down to business here. With the 30th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, this would mean a devastating loss in the NFC Championship game to the Lions here. The Minnesota Vikings select out of East Carolina University
Okay, yeah.
cornerback Siobhan Revel Jr.
Yep.
I want to mock!
So he tore his ACL in September, and so he's missing the whole season. But what do we know about this guy here?
Well, I was at what's that place called across from the new Brighton Ford, the one the bar where they have all the seats in there, Cowboy Jacks or whatever.
Oh wow.
I was in there for a lunch. I was meeting someone, and I got I was in the bathroom there, and I got a text that Ravel had just torn his ACL in practice, and I was like, no, he didn't. And they're like, you'll see in a couple days. And then it indeed came out. So he tore his ACL in practice and has been out ever since. The thing that I love about this kid is that he could have gone anywhere that he wanted. You go back to a year ago at this time, he could have transferred anywhere he wanted for a very large sum of money, and he decided to stick at ECU, which I think is something that is going to be less and less common going forward. Ashton Jeanty, I've made the argument that he is a dinosaur. There will never be another Ashton Jeanty, that an offensive singular superstar that is going to go in the first round that stays at a G5 school all 3 years. Ravel being on the other side. Ravel would be a really good fit for Flores' defense. And the reason that he might become available here, where if he had not suffered that ACL injury in September in practice, I think he would have been a top 15 pick, right around there, right? Like you're looking at someone
6'3",
6'3", springy burner. And that kid knows how to cover too. You want the guy on the outside with Flores that can get his hands on you. He can be standing 5 yards away and he can inspect or gadget you right into the chest.
Just press you right there. I love this.
Defibrillator right in the chest. And now wherever you're going, he's one step ahead of you, right? I mean, the guy is just, it's the shot out of the, again, it's like he's got those super long legs, and it's like, he's like a Salvador Dali painting with they got the elephants on the long legs. It's like springy, right? Like
Wow.
I didn't want to evoke Oscar Pistorius there, but like it's like he just has a very springy way.
It was implied. It was implied.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's exactly what they're looking for physically in a boundary corner, and it's a guy who, with the ACL happening in September, he has a real decent shot to be there in training camp in August. Would be 100% then? We'll have to see. But I think there's a really good shot that he is active for week one with whatever team takes him. I think that this would be a good pick. I think this would be a good value pick, assuming that your medical staff has signed off on it. And it's a similar one to the other one like this in the corner class, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. He is coming off his own injury. It's a hip in that case. Those guys both need to be signed off on. But because they're both coming off these season-ending injuries, there is that shot that one of them ends up falling to a range like this where the late first round where the Vikings are picking. I think this would be a fabulous pick.
Are you okay then if they don't take the defensive tackle with this pick and instead take a cornerback?
Depending on what happens in free agency before that, you can't entirely eschew that defensive line position. And to me, it's almost more important at least to get one stud, one guy that you can hang your hat on. And then you got Phillips, and we'll see what the other one. But to me, that's super important. So if you've come out of free agency and you haven't signed a dude like that, and you also haven't made a trade for one, because that's something else I hear on Twitter, people being like, oh, well, you got the sixth most projected cap space. But if you looked at the free agents, it's not an awesome free agent class. Yeah, you can also use your cap space to absorb the base salaries of trade acquisitions. So that would be a possibility as well. But I would need a starting defensive lineman either out of free agency or in a trade that I felt good about in order to feel good about also taking a round one cornerback here. But certainly those are the two position buckets that I want to address. And we'll have a lot more information by the time we get there.
Love this.
I want a mock.
Love it. He is Thor Nystrom from Matthew Berry's FantasyLife.com. Any other just final words of wisdom as we look ahead to an historic weekend of football, college and NFL?
I think it's so cool that we get the college football playoff now. And I don't want to underscore that. When people are watching college football this weekend and we have the 4 playoff games, we have the one on Friday, we have the 3 on Saturday. Understand that this is a sport that was pushing towards this, sometimes into a wall for 50 plus years. They couldn't get the playoff. They couldn't even get the two teams that everyone agreed were the best at the end. They couldn't even get them to play initially. And then finally we got the BCS. So then it was like the 1 against the 2. Then it took years and we get to the 4. And now we finally have a tournament that is befitting of the sport. 12 teams now. It's going to be 16 pretty quick, but we'll take the 12. It's a big improvement over what we had before.
32, and we let's just wipe out the entire season. Just play a full
Cinderella.
Some teams only play one game. Other teams play.
I mean, the FCS, they have the huge playoffs. So I mean, it's certainly feasible. And for years and years and years, these institutions were turning away from and ignoring what the fans wanted. Where it wasn't helping them with their wallets and their bank accounts. Like so much money is going to be generated from this. It's going to bring so much attention to the sport. And I think we're going to see at least one big upset this weekend. And I just think it's going to be super fun. And these 4 games, they're in a home stadium, right? Like the first round, you have to go to the higher seeded team. Then after that, when it's 8, then we go to the neutrals. But I think it's going to be super fun, and I think we're getting an upset. And I forgot if I said it on this show already. Who I feel very strongly is going to pull the upset here. The Tennessee Volunteers going to Ohio State and Columbus. Tennessee is a 7.5 point underdog.
Oh,
keep the points. Tennessee's winning that game. They will upset Ohio State in Columbus. And the reason why is this is the absolute nightmare scenario matchup for Ohio State. Ohio State has the bad offensive line. They've had multiple season-ending injuries on that offensive line. And we've seen them in the recent past struggle even against a mediocre team in Michigan who happen to have a good front 7. When we talk about these mocks, Michigan has 2 interior defensive linemen that are going to go in the top 15, top 18 or so. Mm-hmm. They were able to shut out the lights on Ohio State's running game. And at that point, you have a mediocre quarterback in Will Howard who is sitting duck behind a terrible offensive line. Tennessee is one of the best front 7s in the nation, and they are loaded on the edge. James Pierce is if the Vikings needed an edge rusher more, we'd be talking more about some of the Tennessee guys, but they have all these insane athletes coming off the edge. Ohio State's not going to be able to keep them out of the backfield. The first thing Tennessee's going to do in that game is shut out the lights on that run game. Judkins and Henderson are going to have no room to run. Then at a certain point when Chip Kelly finally realizes this, you're going to be moving in on halftime or maybe just out of halftime. And the adjustment is going to be to put Howard back there in the pocket longer and be surveying his options. He is going to get sacked. Declan, you were talking about the props before. Let me give you a free one, folks. out there in the books right now, Will Howard's rushing line has been set at 11.5. It was 12.5 before. It's 11.5 now. Anything above 0 is a steal. In college, they take sack yardage off of your rushing total. Will Howard is going to get sacked more in here than someone that's working by the cashier at the grocery store. He's going to get sack. All that yardage is going to come out of his rushing total. There is no chance he gets over that. And the Tennessee Volunteers win this game. I also believe the next day, Ohio State will announce they are parting ways with their head coach, Ryan Day.
I was going to ask you that.
And then the Bears and Ohio State can fight over Mike Vrabel for the next month.
It would be fun.
Wow.
No one's going to be fighting over Ryan Day.
No. He'll find some job in football somewhere. But great stuff today, Thor. You can find Thor's work. You can follow him on Twitter /X at ThorKU. And you can find his work as part of Matthew Berry's FantasyLife.com. And then every Thorsday here, obviously, on Purple Daily. All right, dude. And by the way, like we've been texting on our little thread. You put out an amazing thread just about your mother, and I'll just let people read it on your Twitter account. But yeah, you're talking to a crew of guys that have gone through a lot with our parents here, and so we got your back. And for anyone that hasn't read that thread, go to Thor's Twitter account.
Appreciate it, boys. Love you guys. Appreciate it.
Love you too, Thor. Man. We'll see you next Thorsday, and enjoy a great weekend of NFL and college football. This is Purple Daily. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.